Now then, if you were casting around to find America's answer to Merchant and Ivory, a director to make sumptuous period pieces, I rather doubt that Martin Scorsese would be the first name that sprang to mind. You'd think of Goodfellas and Cape Fear and say, nah, not old Marty. And yet Marty it was who made The Age of Innocence, the lavish 19th century New York romance based on Edith Wharton's novel. The stars include Michelle Pfeiffer, Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder, and Oscar nominations are being confidently predicted. So Tom Brooke discussed the film in New York with Scorsese and La Pfeiffer.
I sent some roses to your cousin Ellen, who was that right?
Very right.
The character that Daniel Day-Lewis plays in The Age of Innocence is Newland Archer, a rich, well-born young New York lawyer. He is engaged to marry May Welland, who comes from an equally well-bred family.
You do love me, Newland. I'm so happy.
Well, why not be happier?
I couldn't be happier, dearest.
Archer is outwardly conformist, comfortable with the rules and rituals of the socially elite world of old New York in the 1870s.
For the most part, Newland Archer is at ease with that. But at the same time, in his imagination and also a little in the reality of his life, he's stretching beyond that world, which is in fact a very suffocating one. He's traveled a little in Europe. He loves European literature and opera, music and so on, paintings. And I think he dreams of perhaps going beyond the frontiers of that environment. But at the same time, he's very much a part of them. And then something happens in his life which begins to sort of break down the system by which he lives.
What happens is that Newland Archer meets the beautiful and seductive Countess Olenska, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, who's just returned from Europe. As an outsider unfamiliar with the social rules of aristocratic New York, the Countess prompts Archer to question some of the assumptions of his world, including its hypocrisy.
It's really and truly a romance, then. Not in the least arranged.
Have you forgotten in our country we don't allow our marriages to be arranged?
Yes, I forgot. I'm sorry. I sometimes make these mistakes. I don't always remember that everything here is good. That was bad where I came from.
Inevitably, the two fall hopelessly in love, but their passion remains deeply repressed. Michelle Pfeiffer says given the social conventions of the time, the relationship just couldn't have worked out in reality.
It was an impossibility, not because it was a fantasy in their minds and because the love wasn't real, but I think that the guilt would have destroyed any kind of love and any kind of chance that they may have had. It would have just overridden them.
Did you find it a particularly difficult role to play?
I did. The dialogue was very difficult. It was making it conversational and yet keeping to the period and not becoming too modern. And yet I had to be more modern than the rest. I had to be looser and yet within the restrictions of that time.
Time to give her up for another woman?
If I want to.
It's very noble.
Yes.
The underlying theme of suppressed emotion is what fascinated Martin Scorsese when he first read the Age of Innocence novel.
What carried me through was the repressed passion between Newland Archer and Ellen Olenska, and I found that to be excruciating and a real challenge to try to interpret for camera. And that carried me through the whole story. Then, when I thought about it afterwards, I realized that repressed passion is one thing, but take that and place that within a context of a society that has very strong rules and regulations, very strong ritual. Then you have a strong conflict, a much stronger conflict.
When people first heard that you were making this film, they were surprised because they thought it was very different in terms of subject matter from your previous work. Do you think it is a break in trend, or are there commonalities between this film and your previous film?
After writing the script, some friends of ours who read it said it's similar in theme, and to some of the films I'd already made. And primarily the two aspects we just discussed. Number one, the repressed passion. You can find that in Taxi Driver, you can find that in Mean Streets, you can find it in Who's That Knocking at My Door, Raging Bull, to a certain extent, and a number of other films I've worked on. I seem to be attracted to that theme, I guess. And there's the theme of a society that has strong rules and rituals. That is also can be, on the other side of the coin, is organized crime.
The psychic violence that is meted out is disguised by a heavy mask of social nicety. On the surface, Archer's wife May appears to be all sweetness and light, but nobody is quite sure if this hides a cunning interior. Winona Ryder, who plays May, says the film's themes of social duplicity and repressed passion are timeless.
It's a love story, and it's about love and sacrifice and passion, and those things are very relevant to today's society. I also feel like there's a lot of similarities in the societies, you know, with the gossip ruining lives, and you see that now, and wearing fronts and masking your feelings. I mean, all those are very, very relevant, I feel.
American critics have praised Scorsese for putting together a film that essentially satirizes the morality of 19th century old New York. It's expected that The Age of Innocence will pick up Oscar nominations when they're announced next month. The only question that remains is just how many.
Oh, my darling, I leave you to find that out.
And no doubt we will. The Age of Innocence opens here on January the 27th.